Welcome to Motive and Malice. Now, when you think of a crime, you might picture something happening in the shadows. But tonight's story, this one happened in plain sight, in brightly lit boardrooms, hidden in pristine financial reports. We're diving deep into the incredible story of Phar-Mor, one of the biggest, boldest corporate frauds in American history. I mean, think about this. In the late 80s, Phar-Mor was such a beast in the retail world that even Sam Walton, the guy who founded Walmart, said they were the competitor he feared the most. That's a huge deal. But what nobody knew, what was hiding behind this incredible success story, was a secret, a lie that would end up costing everyone involved over $1 billion. $1 billion. Just let that sink in. That's the estimated price tag of this fraud, all built on fake profits and loans that were based on pure fiction. So the big question is, how on earth did one of the country's hottest companies pull off a $1 billion lie and keep it going for years? Well, like a lot of these stories, it all starts with one man and his massive ambition. So, to really get this story, you have to get to know the man pulling the strings. His name was Mickey Monus, but everyone called him Mickey. And in his hometown of Youngstown, Ohio, he wasn't just a businessman, he was a hero. So Phar-Mor kicks off in 1982, and its growth is just insane. By 85, they've got 15 stores. Mickey's whole strategy was what he called power buying. Basically, buy a ton of stuff for cheap, sell it even cheaper, sometimes so cheap they were actually losing money on it. And it worked. I mean, by 1992, they had 310 stores and 25,000 employees. But see that date in the middle, 1989. That's when the lie started. That's when the first crack appeared in this massive empire. This quote you're seeing, it's just wild. It's July 1992. Mickey is at the grand opening of the 300th store. He's on top of the world, and he says, "There's no stopping us now." But here's the thing, the chilling part. He said that just days before the whole thing imploded. Because while he was saying those words, the company was already drowning in a secret that was worth millions and millions of dollars. Okay, so let's go back to that crack in the foundation, 1989. The company's CFO, a guy named Pat Finn, has to go to Mickey with some really bad news. After all that incredible growth, the party was over. Phar-Mor wasn't making money anymore. In fact, it was losing millions. So this is the moment of truth, right? What does Mickey do? Does he tell the board the truth? Nope. The story goes that he literally took out a pen, crossed off the loss on the financial report, and just wrote in a profit. Can you imagine the nerve? And with that one move, that single stroke of a pen, the fraud began. That was the very first entry in what would become a completely secret, completely fake set of books. Okay, so it's one thing to fake a number on one report, but how do you keep a lie that big going for years? Well, Mickey and his inner circle came up with this incredibly detailed system to hide the losses and, get this, to fool everyone, including their own auditors from the massive firm Coopers Lybrand. It all came down to living a double life, financially speaking. They kept two sets of books. On one hand, you had the David Report. This was the fake one, showing huge profits. This is what they showed to investors in the board to get more and more money. But then, for the conspirators only, there was the Subledger. And that was the real story. It tracked the actual, growing, catastrophic losses. So what did they do with all those real losses from the Subledger? They threw them into something they called the bucket account. You can literally picture it like a bucket, or maybe more like a financial black hole. It was just a secret account where they dumped all the bad news, all the losses, all the embezzled cash, before they figured out how to make it vanish for good. And how did they make it vanish? This is where it gets really clever. They basically developed a playbook to trick the auditors. See, the auditors would tell them in advance which stores they were going to visit for inventory checks. So out of 300 stores, they'd say, "We're coming to these 4. So what does Phar-Mor do? Step 1, they find out the locations. Step 2, they load up those 4 stores with real inventory, make them look perfect. And then step 3, they take all those losses from the bucket account and just hide them. They'd create millions of dollars in fake inventory on the books for the other 296 stores they knew the auditors would never even look at. It was an absolutely brilliant shell game. But a lie like this, it never stays small. Every year, the hole got deeper, the lies got bigger, and the pressure just kept building. And then the fraud started to get even worse, because Mickey started using the company's money to fund his own personal side hustles. Yeah, at this point, it wasn't just about hiding that the company was losing money.
Mickey Monus started treating Phar-Mor like his own private ATM. He siphoned off more than $10 million to prop up his personal passion project, a basketball league that was failing. And where did he hide all those payments? You guessed it, right into the bucket account, along with everything else.
You can just imagine the stress. Keeping all these lies straight basically became a full-time job for the people on the inside. The CFO, Pat Finn, later said, and you can see the quote here, "My energy was going to cover up a situation, and it really wasn't going towards making Phar-Mor a better company." I mean, they weren't building a business anymore. They were just desperately trying to keep this house of cards from collapsing. So after all this, after years of fooling some of the smartest auditors and bankers in the world, you'll never guess who brought them down. It wasn't some hotshot investigator. It was a travel agent. Seriously, she saw a check for Mickey's basketball league that was paid for out of a Phar-Mor account, and she just thought, that's weird. She showed it to an investor, and that was it. The whole thing came crashing down, almost overnight. And the collapse, it was brutal. The fallout was fast, it was devastating, and it didn't just hurt the company. It sent a shockwave through the entire business world and ruined thousands of lives. Let's talk about the real cost. We're talking about over 16,000 people, 16,000 employees who suddenly lost their jobs when the company went bankrupt. These were people who had no idea what was going on, who just showed up to work and did their jobs, and they were left with absolutely nothing. And of course, the stores where they worked, all 300 plus of them, eventually shut down for good. Just gone, leaving empty buildings in towns all across America. And as for Mickey Monus, the man who started it all, the hometown hero, he was sentenced to 19 years in federal prison. But the story doesn't quite end there. There's another crazy twist. His first trial, it actually ended with a hung jury because one single juror refused to convict him. As you can see from this quote, another juror on that case said, "I believe the person was paid off myself." The FBI even launched an investigation into jury tampering. It's just wild. When the dust settled, people looked at this whole mess and realized something terrifying. The size of this fraud and the fact that the auditors completely missed it, it showed that the whole system was broken. This wasn't just about one bad company. It was about massive weaknesses and how corporations were being watched. And that realization led to some huge changes. Congress passed a law that you might have heard of, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. It was a massive piece of legislation designed specifically to stop another Phar-Mor from happening. It did things like force auditors to rotate so they don't get too friendly with clients. It created a cooling off period. Because, and this is key, some of the Phar-Mor guys used to work for their own audit firm. But maybe the biggest change was that it made executives personally sign off on their financial reports, making them legally on the hook if the numbers were fake. So that really brings us to the big question here at the end. The Phar-Mor fraud worked, ultimately, because it played on our desire to believe in a great success story. The insiders were smart, they knew the auditor's playbook, and they hid the truth right out in the open. Now we have better technology and laws like Sarbanes-Oxley. But could a fraud this big, this audacious, happen again today? It's something to think about. I'd love to know what you think.